Just a second. Say hi. Okay, we gotta go. Say hi. My name. What's your name?
Higher.
This is my son Pryor. We've
Hi,
got
Pryor.
another terrorist, Ireland, who's in the other room, getting ready for dinner. Right, buddy? We're getting ready to have some fun. We're ready to have some good times, aren't we, buddy? All right, Dad's gonna lock this. All right, guys.
Shove Dad away. What's up, Zane?
What's up, guys? How you guys doing?
We're good.
I know. We'll do.
Awesome. We our call scheduled for tomorrow, right, Matt? Oh, Thursday.
Yeah. Thursday. Yes, finally we got something locked in.
Finally. That was a little bit tough, but we got it.
I'll be right back,
Yeah.
buddy.
So you went to Europe. You
I did. I was
yeah.
over in Germany
Sorry, guys.
and Berlin, Prague, Munich, and then Amsterdam. So it was a fun little trip that we went on.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's great.
You might be able to hear Pryor. He wants to be a part of the team, which I don't blame him. So, um,
Hire
well,
him, bro.
I know. Well, let's jump in. Let's figure out kind of where we are on everything. We've got some new faces. We've got some old faces. Let's just like I said, Matt, if you want to start off, tell us a little bit more. I think you were on the last call, right? Last week. I think I remember seeing you on there. Or maybe I'm psychotic. I don't know.
We
How-
we hopped on 2 weeks ago, I think,
Okay.
and then had to hop off. But
Okay, that's
yeah,
what it was. That's right. Well, give us a
yeah.
little backstory on you guys, you and Stephanie, your story, and we can start kind of jumping into, what we're all trying to accomplish together.
I love it. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we're glad to be a part. We sort of had that bug for better ways of building wealth starting about 2020, um, and realized the 401k wasn't gonna get us through to retirement. So, all the different strategies. Obviously, one of them is real estate, and so we managed to pick up a few single family properties back in 2021 and then continue and then pursued various kind of side hustles and stuff. um, we've owned a vintage trailer business that we started and then ended around the pandemic time, but it was a good experience. um, but in 2022 I ended up being part of the Pace Morby cult.
Sure.
And
Been there, done that. Oh yeah.
I'm a gator that's the funder. We fund transactional, EMDs and double closes and Morby methods and stuff like that, or seller carryback as we like to call it in the non-gator community.
Sure.
um, and actually been part of about $2.5 million in transactional funding, probably 50 properties or so.
Cool.
We now have a third property that we are rehabbing right now for rental, but in reality, we were actually on our road trip to work on some of our rentals, and we were listening to commercial real estate audiobooks and realizing we wanted better tenants and loved the triple net lease concept. And of course, Nolan, you ended up in Steph's TikTok feed,
Sure.
and so it definitely helped to spark our interest more.
Well, we're very
It was,
passionate about it, as you know. If you can tell, we're very passionate about the triple net
yeah.
lease, the commercial real estate aspect of it, the whole thing. So that's sounds like you guys are just on fire. And again, we're thankful to have you guys. So let's go in. Zane, you got anything kind of to lead off about kind of where we are this week on things?
Well, I think Anthony's also a relatively new member. I don't want to put him on the spot or anything, but if you'd like, Anthony, if you want to introduce yourself, just give a little rundown real quick.
Uh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. No, my name's Anthony Nash. I guess I'm from Missouri. I travel all over for work, and I only own two residential properties I rent out, and that's pretty much it about me. You came across my TikTok, and it seemed promising, and I was like, you know what? I'm still young. I can take a risk, and that's pretty much why I'm here.
Cool, man.
I love that. I love that. There's a thing that in our life insurance firm where we our president of our firm says to us, every year you come up with one word that's just going to describe your year. And 2024 for us was education. That at least for me it was. I wanted to focus on educating. And then in 2025, maybe Zane has mentioned, we're going to be going like kind of all in on like the YouTube kind of thing and just create it. My word's going to be simplicity. It's like, how can we, all the stuff that we talk about here, which is a part of our group, how can we just distill this down to where you guys, everybody a part of this group, would be able to regurgitate this information and knowledge to your third grader or your third grade cousin? That's really the goal that we're trying to accomplish, to where, because as you guys probably are all aware, you hear the terms, the bonus depreciation, the cost segregation study, debt service coverage ratio, all these like kind of, it sounds a little higher level, but it's really not. It's just like a little bit deeper that can come across as more sophisticated. Zane and I's goal moving forward is just all about helping you not only comprehend what those terms and those metrics and ratios are, but to be able to understand them, but then most importantly, implement them in your business. That's the game. That's the name of the game. Figuring out how you can, where you are right now, let's take where you are and making your next step in commercial real estate. That's just the name of the game. So let's just kind of jump in. I wanted to figure out again, as we're working on our I guess our live calls like this, the name of the game for everybody is focusing on the same thing, assembling our team, walking property, understanding the metrics and the ratios. Does anybody have any big wins that have happened in the last week or two that they'd like to share before I got a win that I like to share, but I want to see if anybody else has like a win that they'd like to share too. All right,
I
well, I'll
think
go
we
first.
did.
Or no, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Uh, our win was as we were doing our homework for brokers. We connected with a very large one that it does international uh, commercial property, but he's local to our area. We're in Southern California, and he was very excited to work with us, and we're going to be meeting up with him and really figuring out the strategy. We gave him our buy box and all that, so I consider that a good win.
Awesome.
It's a great win, and because number one, the guy responded, that's great. But second of all, I could be wrong here, but I feel like someone that is not versed in commercial real estate, stepping out of your comfort zone and having that dialogue and the conversation and making yourself a little vulnerable and being like, look, I don't really know what I'm doing here, but I know that this is what I want to do. It takes a little bit of courage, a little bit of bravery out of the gate. So um, maybe you didn't experience like your head getting a little hot because you're a little nervous. Like I know that I experienced that when I was first getting started. So getting over that hump out of the gate, it just gets easier and easier to make those calls and that warm outreach out of the gate, because you've got confidence to know, okay, this is the dialogue that I expect. This is what I can anticipate this guy to respond with. And you're going to have some either rebuttal or some type of response when the guy says, well, I don't want to work with this person, or vice versa. I mean, when we had our live call our live event 6 to 7 weeks ago, whatever it was, my wife was, when we were looking at all these buildings that we have, one thing that she mentioned that's another great piece that you can take, Matt, and everybody, is most people, they think I got to have the most experienced person on my team. That's the only way that I know that I'm going to be able to get good deals. But one thing that she mentioned is she used to be a mortgage broker, and she was at Regions Bank, a publicly traded bank, and she mentioned that, think about this, someone that's brand new, young, go getting, they don't have the experience, but they got the desire, they have the hunger, the ambition, versus somebody that does have all the experience. They might not have that same outgoing behavior that a young buck would have. And so what she would suggest and what she did is think about it this way, instead of just only looking at the experience, think, hey, the younger guy is working for the experienced guy. So when that younger guy who's going to look at you say, oh my God, this is my number one client, like I'm going to worship this guy, do anything I can to make a sale. If and when that deal comes up, that young buck is going to go to that experienced guy that he's working under and still is going to get that same experience. You're going to get that same experienced experience from that brokerage versus just working. You're not going to end up being a person that's a main priority for that 30-year broker. So does that make sense? Like out of the gate, we're all swinging for the fence trying to find that, main broker. Don't be afraid to reach out to those younger guys, those new associates, because somebody that does not have any experience has raging ambition, especially in commercial real estate because of the transaction speed. And you might be able to create a relationship with somebody that is just over the moon about you being their number one client. So that's another idea that you can use as you're developing and building out your business. Is that fair to say? Zane, you
Yeah,
got something? Yeah.
we weren't specifically looking for someone with experience because I know your recommendation definitely is more in that space of getting someone that's hungry. The positive things aside from that is he picks and chooses his clients
Nice.
and really focuses beyond just being a broker, being a partner, and he's got access to private capital.
Nice.
And he does 98% off market deals. So
Pretty strong.
that was the benefits. But yeah, we're going to continue to look, and I'll shut up now.
No, 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 no. Don't ever feel like that at all. Yeah. I mean, end of the day, that's what we're trying to go for. Lee, I see that your hands up. What's going on, man?
Hey, same old stuff, same old stuff.
Good to see
Hey,
you,
I
bro.
just add on something that you talked about on a broker's a situation that I'm having. Uh, I found a broker and he's very experienced, been over 25 years, but he's not really motivated. Um,
Sure.
and like I look on LoopNet myself and I go from just type in, a filter of 10,000 to 40,000 feet. And there's tons of them in Indiana.
Wow.
And the last two buildings that I wanted him to look at, I had to find.
Interesting.
So, he works once I show him something or say, hey, what do you think about this? I found someone told me about this, or hey, I found this. He does his thing, but yeah, he's not very motivated. And everybody here wants you to sign a contract.
Yeah, that's wild to me. Well, I think there's two steps to that. It's like anybody else. Again, this isn't a knock on somebody that's 60 years old that's in the commercial real estate business, but I think people that have an established business or they have a reoccurring revenue, they don't have the same, again, ambition as somebody younger that has not created a business and does not have that passive income essentially. So that's one thing. The second piece on someone asking you to sign a exclusive listing agreement or purchasing, I don't even know what the term of that would be called, like an exclusive purchasing agent. It just dilutes competitiveness. It dilutes capitalism, really. Like it doesn't create a buyer and seller. It basically ties somebody up the same way somebody would tie up a deal for 36 days or 45 days, and you can walk away if something goes on, but you just tied the deal up. So that's a unique deal. I know Cal Hero has
Threat,
experienced that, but that's an odd sitch.
the threat that I'm faced with, and they make me feel is, well, if you don't sign it, um, the people that do sign with me, that's who I'm going to work for.
Sure.
You're going to be at the bottom of the barrel. So it's like they're forcing you to sign a contract with them so they'll work for you.
Right.
And so that's an issue. I know you don't have it down there, but that's what I'm facing up here. But I just wanted to hit on what you said about motivated. I
Yeah.
want to look for a younger one just because they'll be hungry.
Yeah.
Like I'm hungry. I mean, I'm not young, but I'm hungry. And you know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
looking for somebody else hungry, and this guy I got right now, he's not real hungry.
Well, one piece that I like to, like I mentioned a second ago about like a little win that everybody can take note on that happened that I experienced not this past Friday, but the Friday before. So I had a one of my bankers that I've done some business with. She shot me a text and said, "Hey," and everybody can take this to the bank. Like this is this. I called Zane afterward. He was in on the other side of the world. I called him. I was like, "Dude, you won't even believe this." I was so pumped. So her name is Tiffany. She calls me and says, "Hey, did you just buy this building over in Leeds, Alabama?" And if anybody that was at our event, we got a chance to walk this building. That tenant is in the auction business. I mean, it's like packed full of stuff. And she's like, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, that guy's a great family friend of ours, whatever." And I said, "Cool. Okay, what's next?" Not in like a arrogant way, but just like, "What are we talking about here, Tiff?" And she's like, "By the way, I know the guy that owns the building behind this guy's name is Jerry that owns that just sold me the building. I know the guy that owns the building right behind Jerry's old building, and I'm on this board of nonprofit or something. And I know for a fact that that guy would be willing to sell you that. He's 76. He's got an electrician business. His son owns it. They've been in that building for like 15 years. They don't want to go anywhere. It's a great little industrial corridor." And she's like, "I can introduce you. This guy is whatever, John Smith. I forget what his name is. It's in my text message." And and I said, "Well, cool. Like, send me his stuff. I'll buy him lunch." And she's like, "Well, hang on. We want to be a part of the transaction. If you buy this building, we want to finance you. We want to finance you the building." And I'm like, "Okay, sounds good, you know?" So another piece that you guys can think about adding to your repertoire is, of course, having your brokers that are sending you stuff. But imagine for a second if you started to develop a relationship with a local bank, somebody that's got less than $1 billion in assets. You know, Matt, I can't speak so much on California. The money's inflated out there, but maybe less than 10 billion in assets. But somebody that had a bank that has less than $2 billion in assets, what that means essentially in regards to the FDIC, regards to publicly traded entities, the SEC, they can play by a different set of rules. They can leave a majority of their loans on their books. They don't have to actually package up all their loans or manila fuller loans as mortgage-backed securities and sell them on Wall Street. They can hold on to those mortgages and create cash flow for the bank. So they still borrow from the Federal Reserve, but they're basically playing the arbitrage game. So what I'm getting at is when they're holding these mortgages, they have so much more of an incentive to work directly with your community, like the local municipality. And so when Tiffany reached out, she's like, I saw that you bought that building. I know your business name. And because I've got two other mortgages with them. And they're like, she said, what if in her mind, like think about it in her perspective. She was like, okay, I know that this guy's good for paying the mortgage. I know that he's good for servicing debt. What if I called him because I'm on the board with this guy, this older cat that's looking to sell or retire or whatever. I know that I can create a new stream of income for the bank because this young guy is looking to buy real estate. He just bought something right down the street. And to go a step further on this property, I bought the previous building from Jerry for 38 bucks a foot. The market in the area was going as trading anywhere from 60 to 64 bucks a foot. So imagine in the seller's eyes, the opportunity, like I said, we're getting together this week. Imagine for a second, the seller says, "Hey, well, yeah, I'd love to buy, or I'd love to sell it to you, Nolan. Like, what's a fair price?" And I say, "Well, I just bought this other property for, on paper, a comp would be market rent or market price of 38 bucks a foot. How about this? I'll do you a solid. I'll buy it from me for 39 bucks a foot." And he looks at it and thinks, well, that's not a bad deal. And not to mention his son is running the business. They could lease the building back from me. So I've already got a tenant. I'm buying it for under market, and I've got a banker that is offering to finance the deal for me. So just to come full circle, guys, like we don't only have to rely only on our brokers to send us deals because again, all of these bankers, they live and die by working in the community. They only make money by lending money. So they're running in with business owners, they're running with tenants, they're running at, the local municipal chamber of commerce, like all that kind of stuff. So they probably have a beat on what's going on. And at that local market, you're not dealing with the high level politics. You're not dealing with the left and the right and the up and the down. You're dealing with like real people that are trying to legitimately transact business. So that's a big piece that I discovered just in the last 10 days. I was like, man, so I've called all 7 of my bankers and I said, hey, let's go get some lunch and let's sit down and talk about this, because if you run with anybody that's looking to sell any of your, like, they'll get to a point even too where your banker will say, hey, I got my guy at West Alabama, and he said, hey, I got a guy that is a few months behind. I can't see him foreclosing yet, but it could be a possibility. Would you want to either take over the payments, which is subject to, Matt, you just talked about that with creative financing, Pace Morby, buying property subject to the existing financing. That's an option. Or would you look to buy this property just to get us out of underwater on this building? So I guess what I'm saying is that some of these brokers, they know what's going on because they dance around on LoopNet, or they might know a guy, but don't disregard your local banker and their relationship with the community. And that will allow you to get maybe an undercover or like an insider trading style of feel on what's going on in that municipality to get you maybe in the front row when an opportunity does come up. Does anyone have a thought or question on that, or how you can, I can run through how that dialogue sounds with my banker, but who has a thought or question? Or Zane, do you have an idea on that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was in Germany enjoying a beer, and I get a call from you telling me the story, but I didn't know that you were planning on using the building that you've already bought as a comp. You know,
Yeah.
you already bought it at a discount, and you're gonna use it as a comp. I think that's genius.
Yeah.
But uh, I really like that a lot, and I'm definitely looking forward to hearing how that unfolds.
Yeah.
But we have some, interesting. If nobody else has a question or a thought, we have some interesting deals developing in the group. But I want to make sure that anybody can ask a
Now,
question.
before you move, I want to hear if anybody has a thought, or does someone have a usual, not a usual, but like an initial um uh, uh, uh fear, I would say, because I was speaking with another member in our group just last week, and he has a little bit of a fear to sit down with the banker, not because he's, not, he's got some money, sure, but he's like, I don't know the metrics, I don't know the ratios, I don't know what I don't know. And he was almost have a little bit of an internal um just not afraid, but just like timidness to speak with the banker because he feels like he's not adequate to speak with them. But I would ask everybody on here, like, think about this for a second. If somebody came up and asked you, like, hey, I don't know what I'm like, for example, Zane's really good at like editing videos and things like that. He's really good at it. And if I was to go to Zane and I'd say, look, dude, like, I think what you do is awesome. I'm trying to figure out how I can edit a video. I don't know what I'm doing. Would you mind just like showing me how you do it? I could be wrong, but I would bet that Zane would be like, yeah, dude, 100%. Like, yeah, of course. Like, what's on your mind? What's holding you back right now from where you are? Am I wrong by saying that, Zane?
No, yeah, obviously I would help you out.
You would help me, whether you knew me or not. You probably would just be
Yeah.
like, you'd be more than likely to help me because you knew me, but you get what I'm saying. So what I'm saying though is that it's the same thing when you speak with your banker, which is intimidating because they're the ones that those that have the pesos have the say-sos, right? Those that have the gold make the rules. We all get that. But if you can get over a little bit of an ego, a little bit of a pride of you just not knowing everything, and you go to your local banker, it takes a little bit of courage, like I said a second ago, but you sit down and say, look, like I said, when I was at Community First Bank in Kokomo, Indiana, buying my first couple of houses with Jonathan Malin, he's still there. Uh, Lee, you might know him, Jonathan Malin. I said, I don't know what I don't know. What do I need to do in order for us to be partners and for us to do business together? I said, I just educate me, man. I'm trying to figure that. And I was totally transparent about about me being not sophisticated. People appreciate the transparency. They appreciate you not trying to be over the top and be smarter than anybody. They appreciate because from a bank's perspective too, remember, the only way they make money is if they lend money. So they're looking for new partners, looking for great low risk borrowers, which are people like us. So don't be timid to go and ask bankers to sit down for lunch. First of all, they'll buy you lunch every day of the week, but you can just go get to know them on a personal level. And the way that, okay, before I go into how I do this with bankers, I want to see if anybody has questions or thoughts. And then, like Zane said, we can go to the second part. But I think this is a really important piece that everybody can begin implementing like this week. Does anybody have like a thought or question about that? Like getting to know a banker or how that kind of dialogue or anything works like that?
Do so I've used the same lady, like the bank lady for both properties I bought. And we kind of I guess we're kind of cool. Um, would she be like would her lending me money for this be the same as lending me money for what you have going on? Kind of was what does that make sense kind of?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I don't know. You said you have a couple of residential properties. She might not be a commercial loan officer. She might be a residential loan officer. I could be wrong. Or you can ask her, let's say her name is Sally. Hey, Sally, are you also lending money on commercial property? Because that's kind of been my focus the past, 6 months or whatever. And if it's not if you're not into commercial lending, which is no big deal, do you think you could point me in the direction or recommend your highest and best person in your office that is a commercial loan officer? Then you give them the option to lend you money, or you give them the option to dish off and to somebody in their office. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. Anybody else a thought or question, or before I jump into how to have that dialogue with the banker, and then we can jump forward. Okay. Again, I'm not up here preaching. I think I try and keep this a dialogue. I believe in again, the broker is one of your key pieces, but also when you buy $1 million building, the bank's showing up with three-fourths of the money. So I think it's a big key to have them. So what I like to do, and I did this, I can give an example, and I need to write this down and share this with everyone, what that dialogue looked like. But for example, number one, if you have any broker, immediately ask them for a referral to a local bank that has closed a deal with them in the past like 6 months, right? Any person that has any success in commercial real estate, the only way deals get across the finish line if they're not dealing with BlackRock or a publicly traded REIT or hedge fund is they got to borrow money. So when you go speak with your broker, who we all are hoping on to develop relationships with, we need to focus on asking them for referrals for local banks. Usually, again, less than $2 billion in assets because it doesn't tie up as much riffraff with the Federal Reserve or the SEC. I digress here. But what I'm getting at is when I go and sit down with a local bank, especially the first time that I've been referred to them, I will go to the bank, the branch. I'll sit down. I haven't done this in probably 6 months. I just got a new referral with Bryant Bank in Birmingham. I like to spend the first 30 minutes of that, and it sounds like a long time. It's really not. The first 30 minutes of an hour meeting talking only about that banker's family. I don't want to ask anything. I don't want them to ask me anything about my family. I don't want to talk about anything about a deal that we've done. All I want to talk about is how did that banker get into the business? Where did he grow up? How many kids does he have? Does his kids go to college? Are they in high school? What sports do they play? I want them to know that, hey, I give a shit about you as a person. And I really do, right? Because you're trying to develop a relationship, right? But the main focus is they know that, hey, I'm not just some Joe Blow coming and wasting their time. I actually care about creating a relationship where you lend me money on a really great deal. I promise to pay you back principal plus interest on that mortgage that you offered me, that kind of thing. So I spend the first 50% of that entire meeting is focused on the banker and their life and their family. Okay. After that, of course, they're going to have the law of reciprocity. They're going to come back and say, well, what about you? Why did you even show up to my office today? Right. And you be very, very brief. You're like, look, I love, you can say I joined this group, or you don't have to even do that. But you say, my group and I, you can always use my group and I, our team and I, we're looking for commercial real estate, light industrial property. You can go through a quick little spiel of like how and why you like what you do. But most importantly, it's like, look, end of the day, we don't have a deal tied up at this current moment. I know that this is, our team and I have 12 buildings, just over 220,000 square feet of light industrial real estate. What we try and do is buy properties that have, 1.4 debt ratios, at least a 10 cap, and at least a 10% cash on cash return. That's what we're chasing as a group. And we're very, very strict with our offering criteria. You say something like that. Because again, you're speaking their language. You're using commercial real estate vocabulary. And then you sit back and say, look, at the end of the day, I'm not going to send you anything that's going to waste your time. So in the bank, so you give them like this quick 4 to 5 minute quick synopsis of who you are and what you're doing, and then you pin it back on them. So tell me more about the bank's appetite. Tell me more about, what you guys are into right now, because banks have ebbs and flows of their appetite. Sometimes they're like, if anybody that was at our live event 2 months ago, my banker Patrick Levette was like, sometimes a year ago we were so hot on self-storage. Now we don't really lend on that. We were crazy hot on office 4 years ago. We don't touch it now. Now we're huge on light and like, so they have hot and cold, appetite, just like you and I do. So I like to, after I just hit them quickly with who I am and what we're looking for and what our group does, then I sit back and say, well, tell me more about you, the bank, and y'all's appetite for risk. What are you guys looking for out in the marketplace? What are you seeing? Asking for their forecast, asking for their opinion, and then trying to get to know what that bank's appetite is when you're trying to find a piece of like, because what you'll do, you'll find out like, okay, I can only do this much loan to value with this, but they have a great refinance program. Or, hey, I know I can get 24 months of interest only with this, but I know that the loan to value is going to be a little bit lower. So what happens is you start to discover these different banks' lending appetites. And then depending upon the deal that comes into your pipeline, you can, in your head, okay, I know this is a great deal for Renaissance. This is a no-brainer for Millennial, or this is my guy for West Alabama, or Bryant Bank, or whoever. You'll develop that spidey sense for the deal that comes into your pipeline, exactly which lender is going to love that particular deal. So that's for me, that's what I've discovered. And then after you just ask them what they're looking for, their appetite, what they're into back and forth, they're going to again ask you like, so what are you trying to do next? Like what's next on the pipeline? I know you just said you don't have any deals. Yeah, so here's what I like to do. Like I said, I know our time's getting short, blah, blah, blah. What I would like to do is, would you mind I'd like to just send you all my personal stuff so you can all my information, my financials, so you can personally underwrite me. That's the key. Ask them to underwrite you as an individual before you present a deal to them. I'm going to send you on my financial statement, my tax returns. That way you can get to know me financially before we even, come together on a deal. Because what that shows is it shows initiative. It shows that you understand what's important to them. And you mentioned all of those commercial real estate metrics and ratios that probably not a lot of people are talking about, or if they're not in commercial real estate, if they're not very specific, they don't even know what you're talking about. So you just spoke their language. You asked them what they're looking for, and then you provided them all the information that they need in order to underwrite you and then underwrite the deal. They're going to be like, this dude is amazing. Like, wow. And then you send them all that stuff that afternoon with the whole email. Say, man, we're really excited about this. Once we find that deal, we'll have to be back in touch. And they're going to respond back to you less than 24 hours. I'm 6 for 6 on this. They'll respond back to you and say, that sounds awesome. I'm going to send this to underwriting. So happy to meet you. It was great conversing with you. Please, please, please let me know when you have a deal, because we would love to take a peek at it. That's what happens every single time. Every single time. I'm 100%. I'm batting 1,000 right now. because you focus on the bank's appetite and their approach towards what is important to them before only going and asking and asking and looking for things. Does that make sense from like 30,000 feet? Sorry for that little, that sermon there, but that's, I believe in that. And that what that's going to do is it's going to create rapport. And they're going to say, man, imagine if I could have that one guy as a borrower from me versus all those other deals. Because what's going to happen is he's going to call you up, especially at the end of the year around this time. He's going to say, hey, do you got anything else that you'd like to refinance? We got this really cool program right now, and you're a really low risk borrower. We'd love to lend you money. And what do you know? What do they say? Somebody that owes the bank 500 grand, you got a problem. You owe the bank 500 million, they got a problem. I think that's where we're all trying to chase. So that's kind of where my head is on that. Who has a thought or question on that kind of like dialogue and how that whole sermon went? Cool. All right. Zane, thoughts or questions you want to move forward on what was on the agenda tonight?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, like I was saying, we have some interesting developments from different members in the group. One of them being Zach here, who is on the call. I think, Zach, how long have you been part of the group so far?
Well, I guess I officially joined that Monday or that week after that live event. So a
Yeah, dude, it was
Okay,
awesome.
yeah.
couple weeks ago, a couple months.
Yeah, been great.
Okay. Well, I know that you and I have been going back and forth kind of on a deal that you're working on up in Ohio, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know the whole story from start to finish, but I kind of want to hear it, and I'm sure other members of the
Yeah.
group could benefit from it. So if you kind of want to just like tell your story, um, and kind of tell about the status of the deal right now,
Mhm.
and what kind of negotiations you guys are in the middle of right now, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that deal specifically, like Nolan was just talking about earlier, a young, hungry broker. He's actually an associate, so it actually worked out pretty well, and he's been working closely with his boss or whatever you may have it. So I've been getting the full service from them, but actually contacted him within the probably first week or two of running through the course and everything. He had sent over a few properties, nothing really crazy, and then he sent over this one that we're working on the deal right now. And he, before I even mentioned the idea of seller financing, he's like, "Oh yeah, this seller is willing to do seller financing on the deal as well." So I was like, "All right, well that's great. Half the battle is done right there." So long story short, we started plugging away with some numbers. Things just made sense. Drafted up an LOI. We set on pretty much found an offer price that was going to work for both of us. Found out why the seller was motivated. Walked the property with the broker, got to know him a little bit more, got to see the building, feel it, touch it, smell it, all that good stuff. And then, right now we're kind of just working on the details of making sure all the leases make sense. So that way, we're putting contingencies in place so that way the leases are favorable for us and obviously the seller as well in place before we go ahead and pull the trigger on it, right? But like I said, we got an offer price set in place that made sense. We got all the other small details worked out. He's good to seller finance it. He's actually going to stay in the building, so it's kind of like a lease back thing. And then his son owns a company who actually is one of the tenants in the building as well. So they were willing to sign 5-year triple net leases. And then we're just working on getting the other two tenants over to this triple net leases. And then we should be good to go there. So still gotta get it over the finish line, but we're kind of just working on that a little bit. Had some dialogue with a broker earlier. He said the seller's kind of just being a little bit stubborn and stuck in his ways. So he said he was going to really dig and find out how actually motivated he is to sell. So that way we can kind of come back with something that he's gonna bite on, and then we can get this thing finished with.
Zach, go into quickly. I think this is a really great little case study. I mean, that's just badass that you're making money moves like that quickly. I mean, it's amazing, really. Um, talk about. I'd like to ask you what it was like when you're were you uncomfortable making those like meeting up and walking buildings, or are you just a man of steel, or was it, or were you just like, you are a man of steel? I've seen you physically. You're a fit guy. So my
Thank you.
question is though, is like doing things that are a little uncomfortable out of the gate. I would ask you like anything when you first did it, you're like you're feeling a certain way, but now you're like, wait a minute, I've already done this. Like, can you walk through that kind of like that mental process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest thing for me, is like you said, like, you have to do it, and you come out at one of two ways. You do it and it turns out well, or you do it and it turns out not well, but either way, you made it through it, right? And obviously after that first one made it a lot easier. And then I'm going to say another big, huge piece of it, was my buddy Griffin, who's on the call as well, who got
Yeah.
me involved in this whole thing. So watching him do it while he's plugging away at work and doing his thing, he's stretched short on time. And I was like, oh shoot, well, if he can do it, I can do it, right? So that was another big thing. And then just hearing everybody else on the call, like they've done it. I'm just a person just like they are as well. It's nothing impossible. You're not asking anything crazy. And then I think the biggest thing was making sure that we're providing value to those brokers. So that way it's not like, oh yeah, send me a building and then, you're not going to get anything out of it. But creating that win-win relationship with them. So I think that was a big thing. And then also, like you said, the young, hungry guy, it kind of just worked out. He's a little bit newer. Obviously, I'm newer and fresh to this thing as well. So it kind of was just very upfront about that. Exactly like you said, he loved the transparency, and then we kind of just been rolling since then.
Yeah, man, that's great. And on top of that too is like you said, a young guy, you guys are both young. So what that means is that you guys can grow your business together for the next 45, 60 years. If you really think about it, you got plenty of time to grow your business together. And that transparency will just keep on going over because it goes back to what I've said before, where imagine for a second for Zach's situation where what is your broker's name, Zach?
Evan.
Evan. Okay, Evan, right? Imagine Evan's like, I'm working my ass off for this Zach guy, and right now I don't. It's very unclear if all this work is going to pay off or not, right? It's very true. Like nothing happens until something happens, right? Like until the deal closes, nobody, there's no property to insure, there's no commissions to be paid, there's no money to be lent. Like everything has to happen when it closes, right? So this Evan guy is working essentially right now for free. He doesn't know if there's an end in sight. He doesn't know the light at the end of the tunnel. But imagine for a second that Zach's like, look, if you find this particular deal, this box that's very small, right? I get it. It's a small box. But if you find this, you have 100% guarantee to close. You have 100% guarantee opportunity to get paid commission, right? So then what happens is in 6 weeks or, hopefully in 2 months from now, hopefully before the end of 2024, so you can get that depreciation, Zach,
Yeah.
you close that deal and Evan gets paid. But what do you think for a second? Like, think about that. This new guy who's ambitious, he's go getting, and he is teaming up with this Zach guy. They're going to be like, Evan's going to be like, wait a minute, what if I spent all my time looking for Zach's deals because I have 100% opportunity to get paid? So what you guys can all do, if you think about this, is if you can get two, maybe three guys. I kind of like it to keep it to two because you get three guys, then you're jack of all trades. But I like to keep it to two guys. Imagine if you had two guys just almost solely working for you because they know that if you send them a deal, they have 100% chance of getting paid, which is their incentive. They're not in the investment game right now. Like that's not their motivation. Their motivation is commission, which is not uncommon. But imagine if you have two guys working for you, like, oh my God, that guy just closes deals. All he does is close deals. Whenever I find him his deal, he closes. So for everybody, if you think about it, man, imagine if you had two different guys that were just like slaving for you and looking for your deals because they know that you'll close. So that's another just incentive that you can let the broker know, like, hey, you do what you find what I'm looking for, guess what, buddy? We got plenty of capital behind us that will close this deal. You are guaranteed to get paid, you know? So that's just another piece on top that can add a little bit more incentive and pizzazz to your offer when you're starting out with a young broker, if that's fair to say.
I got another quick point that Zane was the one who brought this up, and it was genius. It ended up working out really, really well in this specific situation. I don't know if it's going to work out this way every single time. But so Evan was the listing agent on the property. And long story short, Zane was like, dude, why don't you just ask him to have dual representation, and then he gets double commission. So now he's even got more incentive to go look for it.
Yep.
So everything that comes in his pipeline that he's listing it as, or he's the seller's broker, and if he sends it to us, then he's getting double as well. So that's just another thing on top of it.
Go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
will
Sorry.
admit, I will admit that was definitely Nolan that that taught me that. I won't take credit for that one, Nolan.
I mean, he's listening. Zane's listening to what I'm saying. But what
I'm
what it
listening.
definitely does is it goes from someone earning 30 grand to earning 60 grand on $1 million building overnight in the same deal. So talk about incentive to not only want to have the seller leave money in the deal because now that guy's going to make double commission. So again, if you guys are thinking about it, always try and put yourself in that broker's shoes because it's going to help you kind of have a better understanding of like what's going to help this deal get across the finish line. And if you can help put more money in his pocket without changing the deal or changing his lifestyle, he's going to much more wanting. It goes down to like $1 million building. Think about it. He could sell it to you on double commission. He'd have to go and sell a property for $1.5 million to somebody else on single commission to earn the same amount of commission, or whatever the number would be. So it's very incentivizing to have both sides of that coin and represent. So he's going to have the most ridiculous incentive of all time to help get that deal across the finish line if he's representing both the buyer and the seller, right? So that's a no-brainer, 100%. Zane, nice job. Thanks for listening to my TED Talk. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, let's open this up for the last 15 minutes or so. Who has a thought, question, idea, anything like that we can kind of go over? I really didn't share my screen or anything tonight. I know I can definitely do that here in a few minutes if anyone like wants to run through something, but I think that this has been actually pretty good just on the dialogue and conversation with, driving leads, if that makes sense.
I got a question, Zane.
Yeah, man, go for it.
I'm sorry. Nolan, I got one for you. My bad. Or Zane can answer too, but
Sure.
So I got a deal I'm working on. So there's two tenants. One is currently a gross lease, and funny enough, this is a side story, but it's also Evan, same dude that Zach's working with. Similar deal. Talk to Evan, and this is another seller also open for even like 30% of the deal, which is awesome. But anyways, two tenants. One's gross, and Evan already talked to them. They can convert that to triple net. The other tenant is month to month. And I guess the seller doesn't want to really mess with getting that tenant switched to triple net prior to closing. But what Evan was saying, we could, have a contingency to where while under contract, we would have to go to that month to month tenant and, convince or offer them triple net, and the deal wouldn't close unless they went triple net. I guess, what do you think about that? Would we kind of need to put that on the seller?
Yeah, Griffin, what I would do, and you're losing some bars on it. It might be in a bad spot. What I would do, I'm not telling you what to do. My recommendation would be get them to sign a lease, something longer than month to month, because that's a riskier deal if you know that they can walk away for whatever reason. So you buy a building at what it's currently cash flowing, but then for whatever reason they get up and they go down the street. Well, you just lost a percentage of that entire gross rent of that building. So what I would recommend doing is signing them up for something. It doesn't matter if it's a gross or a net lease, because what I've discovered in my experience, again, I've got one building that's a gross lease. Everything else is a triple net lease. And a gross lease is very similar to a residential property. It's believe it or not, even if they're a business owner, they have a very similar outlook where the landlord is responsible. I've told the story before where I've got a building over in Trussville, which is like northeast Birmingham, and we clean the gutters every year. But for one reason or another, one day there was water coming out of one of the gutters, and the lady, she called me fuming because she got water in her hair walking out because it was raining. She was fuming. And I'm like, I don't give a shit, Trish. I don't care. It's not my problem, right? But it's a gross lease, so somehow or another it's my responsibility, right? So to be transparent, a tenant that's on a gross lease. So think about this. A gross lease and a triple net lease are really about the same amount of cash flow. Your cash flow is really not going to change if it's a net or a gross lease. So like imagine if you're throwing off $100,000 a year of gross rent and then you've got $20,000 of expenses, you have $80,000 of net cash flow, right? On that one deal because you have to pay the taxes, the insurance, you maintain it, right? The reason why a triple net lease is so on paper sexy is because you're able to charge $80,000 a year of net operating income, but the tenant is responsible for those $20,000 of expenses. So really, even though that you charge the gross and you charge the net, your cash flow is the exact same. It's usually about the same, to be, if I can be honest with you. The biggest difference though is that you don't have the headaches. The tenant is responsible for all the headaches, not you. I personally prefer that every single day of the week because the gross tenant, the gross, or even if it's a modified gross tenant, they defer to the landlord to be responsible for all their problems. In net leases, they never call me. I rarely speak. I've spoken to my tenant like, well, I got one tenant that I haven't spoken with in like a year and a half. He just everything is ACH. I don't even talk to him unless something's like, again, I haven't talked to him. It's been probably almost 20 months I've talked to him. But every month it just keeps coming in. And I drive by there every other 3 months just to check in or whatever. But what I'm getting at though is that you got a gross lease that pays the expenses and you got the net lease that's right here. So you have the same amount of cash flow. The difference is that you have a different style of tenancy with the gross. They have more of a victimhood mentality. The net lease is more of a business entrepreneur mentality. So what I would recommend, if I'm being honest, Griffin, is I would tie them up for a 3 to 5 year lease. And then I would buy the building knowing that you've got to pay some expenses of theirs. But then over time, you can say with some contingencies in that lease that, hey, after year one, I'll pay all the expenses. Year two, you begin to reimburse for taxes. Year three, you reimburse for insurance. And you can totally do all that. It's totally easy. You just like make that a part of the lease. So by the time that year five rolls around, they've accumulated all the expenses in your life. Now you've got 2 net leases on that building, and you still got the cash flow increasing every month or every year by 3%. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Thank
That's
you.
the way I think about it. Who else? Anybody else got anything else?
No, if nobody else has got anything, I got a question for you.
Hey, Keone, what's up, man?
Um, so obviously I know we talk about it all the time. West Coast a little bit more expensive, and just with where the cap rate's at right now, everything's kind of sitting around 5, 6%. Um, and one of the ways that my broker is like trying to get over that annoyance is he's been finding me deals where he's been talking about replacement rent. So he has a couple of deals that come across his desk, and it's the previous owner of the building sold the company, previous owner of the company sold the company but kept the building and leased it out to the new owner of the company for like a stupid cheap rent. And it's like, for example, this property that I got sent, they're only paying 53 cents when really market's around 120 a square foot. And my broker's been sending me these deals talking about, hey, we can maybe recapture the rent to more of like a market rate. I know it's not really an option for us as far as like doing a partner deal and that kind of stuff, but I guess in real life though, how would you look at these kind of deals? Something that you would spend time, underwriting, or would you kind of ignore them and put them on a back burner, not really
Sure.
paying any attention to them?
No, that's a good question. So basically you're asking, let's say something's trading at 60 cents a foot and the market's really at $1.20 a foot, right? So it's basically a half
Mhm.
price rent, correct? Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So the way that I would underwrite this deal is very simple. I know the market rent is whatever it is. The bank does not care at whatever the market. They care when you maybe refinance, but they care focus on whatever the cash flow currently is in that building. You got to buy the building at what it currently is executing in cash flow. So if you know that the cash flow could potentially be worth 200,000, right? Which is badass. Like it's awesome. That means like, it's a $2 million building at a 10 cap. That's awesome. But it's currently at a $100,000 of income. You have to purchase that building at what it is currently cash flowing. You can't buy that at because that's not a deal at that point. That person would try and trade that deal to you at what the future value could be. So what I would suggest, again, it's up to you, and you go to that guy and say, hey, buddy, I'll buy that building from you, but you got to go and raise the rents to what the market price is. Put it on him. Make him pay the leasing commissions. Make him do all the work to raise the rents. Make him have to go find a new tenant that wants to pay market rent, and let him say, hey, I'll buy this property from you at a 10 cap or whatever the number you come up with, whatever the sitch is. But I'm not buying this building unless it's trading at whatever the market rent is. And you want to do all the work to get that price? Awesome. I'll buy it from you. But until then, good luck selling that thing at a 4 cap on something that's just half occupied or half under market rent. Like doesn't that seem fair for both parties though?
No, I completely agree, and that's kind of what I responded to at least my broker, right? So no, I think that's a great way to play it as far as talking to the seller.
Yeah. And those guys will understand that, especially if they're an owner user, they might be more on like, well, that's not fair. Well, those guys can kick rocks. But any commercial real estate investor is just trying to pull a fast one. Like, be honest. Like, if I had a vacant building that I bought for 400 and I thought that I could sell it for 2 million just because I thought that's what the market rents were going to be, how unfair is that for you as a buyer? Say, hey, buy it for me for 2 million, but you got to lease it, you got to rehab it, and you got to do all the work. That doesn't make any sense. A building is only what it's cash flowing. And if there's no rent, it's not worth very much,
Completely agree. And this is totally like, there's a few of these deals floating around out here, and my broker agrees. He thinks they should be illegal, but here we are.
Well, don't be afraid.
So,
Don't be afraid to make offers. Don't be afraid to hurt somebody's feelings. Like hurt somebody's feelings 1 or 2 times. Make them lick their wounds. Make them, as Zane would say. We got with John Surdy. He's got a deal in Florida right now where, believe this or not, 2 months ago, John made an offer. The guy literally vomited. He vomited because of the offer, and I'm like, I need to change my thought process. I need to start making people vomit when I make them an offer.
oh yeah,
I never heard that in my life. Someone getting so offended emotionally that they throw up. It's just kind
love
of
it.
fun.
No, that's good.
Yeah. So anybody
Appreciate it.
to get moving as we get moving out of here. I know everyone's time is valuable. Like I said, I've got 2 kiddos. So anybody else have anything kind of closing as we get out of here before we move on? Awesome. Well, again, I appreciate everyone being on here tonight. I'm excited about kind of where we're headed. If anybody has anything else on their mind, get with Zane and I. Of course, we're always in your corner. Anything we can do for you guys, we're all about it. But most importantly, focus on assembling your team. We focus on the brokerage. We focus on being teammates. Add that banker. Do not get over that little hump of just a little bit of timidness to go sit down with one of those bankers. Ask your broker for a referral, and then go to that banker's office and sit down and spend 30 minutes talking about them, 5 minutes about you and what you're trying to accomplish, and then focus the last 15, 20 minutes on the bank's appetite, and then how you're going to send them all your personal information so how they can underwrite you financially, and then you can do a deal once that property comes in your pipeline. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Love it. All right, everyone. What I'm going to do, I'll upload this to YouTube. If anybody has any thoughts or questions, reach out to us. We will be in your pocket. Anything you need from us, just let us know. Okay? Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. We'll catch you guys next time. Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.